To participate in this meeting, you must have registered with the city prior to the meeting. If this meeting is disrupted, we will recess for 5 minutes and return. If that does not correct the issue, the meeting will end and be rescheduled. I have some Zoom tips here. With so many participants, and it only takes one, please try to mute whenever you're not speaking. It only takes one person to have an open mic and we start getting echoes. It makes it pretty hard for other people to hear. So mute your microphone when not speaking, except for the chair, of course. Remember, the meeting is live streamed and recorded. So whatever happens here is recorded in the digital world forever. So remember that. To get the chair's attention for questions or comments, you can raise your hand in Zoom by clicking the raise hand button, or hold your hand up in front of the camera and make it very vivid. Get up close. Sometimes it's hard to see this back here, especially when we have so many people, so the screens are pretty small. So if you want to be recognized, please get your hand up there and make some motion so that we can catch you. Voting will be done by show of hands. First, we will call all in favor. Then please hold your hand up so it can be recorded. Then we will call for opposed. If you don't have a camera and Sammy can't see you with that hand vote, then she will call on you for a vote after everybody else has done the visual vote. Sammy, do you want to do roll call now or after my comments? Let's do the roll call now. We've got a quorum. You're muted.
Thank you. I show present is Patty McConnell, John Lehman, Nancy Bell, John Fox, Linda Krieger, Sharon Taylor, Todd Waters, Terry Dawson, and Jeff Milam. I have absent at this point Marcus Alexander, Kyle Blaine, and Paul Thompson. There is a quorum.
Thank you, Sammy. I want to remind everybody, it comes up every year and we have this discussion, but as the mayor, I do not vote unless there is a tie. Oregon revised statutes state that the governing body and an equal amount of citizen representatives make up the budget committee. I am not a member of the governing body. I am the mayor that runs the meeting of the governing body. So just be aware that I do not vote except for a tie. I'd like to go with some opening comments, and Sammy, if you'll share. Are you going to share? Okay. Some comments and just some oversight on what we do in the process of our budget. Our council goals are listed above here: livability, health and vitality, the utilities and infrastructure capacity, dynamic operational capacity. I think that one has been a real key element for us and will always be as long as we're a smaller city. That dynamic really refers to a lot of the workload that our city staff carries on, overlapping into other departments and other jobs, just really trying to keep big projects going in a small city. Obviously, the responsible fiscal stewardship, strategic planning is important. We're doing a lot of planning, and fortunately, previous planning is paying off, but we've got to keep it going. If we don't get the planning elements done for our big capital projects and growth, it's going to hurt us in the future. Economic development obviously is a concern for a city. The newest one is the last: citizens committees and commissions. This is a real near and dear aspect for me because I believe this is the gateway to our citizens from our governing body, and it's the input, it's the two-way communication from committees to and commissions to the council and vice versa. That two-way communication is so important. I I like to think of our committee members as the subject matter experts in these different elements, and to be able to pass off the important work of the fine tuning of things to these committees and delegate these important projects that affect the future of this community so profoundly. I don't think we realize how much so. And so it's been a real element of communication that we really carry the citizen input to the committees and then to the council and back down. Next, Sammy. This is an illustration of the work that goes on in these projects. This is our project list. I know it's real hard to see, but the long blue boxes list the projects, stormwater master plan, and then down below that, out of the boxes at the bottom of the chart shows what is involved or who is involved to make these things happen. So if you look at these projects, stormwater master plan, parks master plan, water master plan, sewer master plan, urban growth boundary, development code, transportation, economic development, and all of those things underneath these boxes show who has to be involved in these. And it's relevant to look at these and recognize that the staff is coordinating all of these issues, and we're going through committees, maybe outside agencies, our engineers heavily involved, of course, in some of the master plans and especially the bigger projects. If you look at economic development and transportation, we don't have enough room to list all the agencies we deal with in our transportation plan. With the interstate interchange there, we've got ODOT, we've got Lane County, so many other elements and agencies that we deal with. Anyway, I think this is a real good overhead perspective of the projects and what it takes to get these things done and what our staff does that a lot of us don't see. Next slide. The priority-based budgeting. When I became mayor, we were just stepping into this, and we're fine-tuning it, and every year we learn more and more and get better at it. The first big cog there is the staff presentations to council at our retreats that we hold every year, generally around February. What this is the staff comes to us with their wish list, with their issues and concerns, and gives us some fairly detailed information on what really goes on in the city as they operate, and what these employees are doing to keep this city running, and what they need to keep it running efficiently and to meet our goals that we've set. Given this information, we, as a council, look at our goals and see if they fit those elements after we get this information from the staff. Once those goals are set, we've gone a little bit further in the last, I think this is the third year we're presenting the work priorities, which is a large table of projects underneath our goals. And the council looks at those with the input from staff to determine what items we want to look at, particularly in the budget year, but usually 1 or 2 budget years. And so those tasks will be listed in the box as priorities, and that's what staff looks at when they're working throughout the year. They look at that chart, make sure it's a priority of council, and move forward with it. If it's not on there, it's a council approved document, so they need to justify why they would be putting their work into something that's not on the priority list. So the third cog, which is the smaller cog on the left, and by no means the size refers to the importance of it. This is where the budget is presented to the community, and this budget committee takes these items, and you basically get a representation of what the council got at the retreat from our department heads. You get that information, that what they're doing, what they need, what kind of issues and problems they may have, and how our our budget and our priorities can help them move forward to keep the city running smoothly. Next. So this is the list of things that weren't on the priority list from last year that the staff worked on. As you can see, it's considerable. I'm sure all of us have had so many issues that we certainly didn't plan with a pandemic coming upon us. The declaration of emergency, which created changes in City Hall operations that changed our staff work hours, the way we interact with the public. We closed our City Hall for a considerable period of time. Changing how our public meetings were held. We initially were using, if the smaller committees were going, they were able to go have person-to-person meetings with following the mandates. Obviously, the City Council, we went to Zoom, and there's both some benefits and drawbacks to that. And we're still working through those, but overall, Sammy has taken on the Zoom thing and got this under control. And I think it's worked really well. I still miss that person-to-person contact, but it's as good as it gets under the circumstances. It obviously changed how we work with partners. One of the frustrations I hear from staff a lot was the bigger agencies, counties and LCOG and stuff that we work with a considerable amount of time on a lot of our projects. They were probably more hampered by their workspace than City of Coburg staff was with ours, because most of our people had their own offices and stuff. So trying to get information that we needed from, say, LCOG to get something done where their workspace was a little more confining or restrictive created some issues for our staff, and of course delayed many things that we were working with in our projects and capital improvements. And then of course, Ann and others had to spend a lot of time writing up and meeting the OSHA requirements that the state mandated with the pandemic. Continuous policy updates and the OSHA mandates almost monthly really took a lot of time, unfortunately. The review of the current police policies, as you know, policing is a national issue, and I think Chief Larson always had a good setup with policy and training with our department, but he reviewed those and he made sure we're up to the nationally accepted standards, and maybe looking at changes to really specifically address how Coburg can do better, and he's always doing that. So the pandemic wasn't necessarily new, but certainly the policing issues nationally really put us under a microscope as far as policing, and the chief, I think, has done well with dealing with that. Our police department, for those of you that don't know, was called to the wildfire up the McKenzie River. They worked out of the incident command post. The area was shut down and police had to monitor contractors and stuff going in and out. We were just talking today, animal recovery, trying to house animals that were affected by the fire, and let alone the people that we had to control going in and out of that area. And our police department spent several hours up there. I think they did well over a couple hundred hours of time up there. Obviously dealing with the smoke and health concerns for the community, trying to just be aware of people that may have issues and stay on top of any of their needs. And then our focus on the support of local businesses. And fortunately, our businesses are hanging on there. And I think that's a lot because our community has supported them very well. And I hope we continue to do that. Then Zoom. For us, all of us that have just continued to have meetings, Zoom is the lifestyle right now for anybody in government agencies. I hope to get back to some normality. We have had some benefits from Zoom. We have more people attending our meetings and stuff, which is an element of communication that I think is very important. And we're trying to figure out how we can get the best of both worlds and keep people involved in our governing. Next, please. So we had some real concerns, obviously, at the beginning of last year, calendar year, that how this would affect our revenues, and we were very careful. I know Ann went ultra conservative and was watching the numbers as we went through that year. Fortunately, a year later, our revenues are stable, and even the state shared revenues, most of those are very stable. It's a minimal effect on the city of Coburg. Strong community leadership. Right at the top, I just have a wonderful group of counselors. They are good decision makers. They're well versed in many aspects of what this city needs. They ask tough questions. They discuss things, and we make good decisions. Our staff, we made it through. As it says, they're all working and healthy, and I attribute the staff to a lot of hard work to maintain the safety of their work environment and the interaction with the community. And I know they put a lot of effort into that, and I think that paid off great dividends for us. Our projects continue to move forward. Again, one of the issues we had with that was we were probably able to do a lot of things that could move us forward, but we had to wait for other agencies and other contractors and stuff with restrictions that severely curtailed their ability to do things we needed. City partners were working together to address many challenges, and transportation and annexation are big issues, and Ann and I are constantly in meetings with multiple agencies trying to get our needs addressed and see what we can do from a regional aspect to help our city. The city services continuing uninterrupted. Again, the staff has worked really well, just trying to lay low and get the work done. And I applaud them for that. I think there's so many great examples. We've had, issues with our water system and stuff, and our staff has just been able to get through that, work hard, and our citizens aren't even aware that there's been issues and breakdowns and things. They're just doing a great job, and I appreciate the effort under the stress. It's just been incredible to watch the staff move through this. Again, downtown businesses are hanging on. Continue to support them. Coburg is well known and for many of us, and one of the reasons I love living here is we all take care of each other, and I hope we continue to do that. Next slide. We are strong and we are resilient, and I think that's a huge element, both to our citizens and our staff. What does the Budget Committee do? We represent the citizens as a committee member, not as yourself, but you represent citizens. And we hear the budget message and we review the proposed budget. And the staff, I think, and our process that the council and this budget committee has come up with is really working on a good format that brings good information to us so that we can make good decisions. We discuss the proposed budget, we ask questions of the staff, and that's a real important item, and that's the key to this meeting especially, is your opportunity to ask questions about what goes on with the staff members that are doing it right here. Then from there, we make a recommendation as a budget committee to council to adopt the message as approved by the budget committee. Next. What we don't do, and again, up on top there, the mayor doesn't vote, so there's no confusion about that. I am not truly a member of the governing body, which the statute states that is part of the budget committee. I will vote to break a tie. So the committee itself does not set policy. We don't set salaries or contract terms. We don't decide on whether a service or program will be provided. And we don't have, as a committee, the final vote on the adopted budget. That is totally up to the governing body, which is the city council. And these are Oregon revised statute. This is a state law. It's not a Coburg thing. So just be aware, there's significant statute wording on what we do and what we don't do. This is the quick course. Next, please. So budget process on Zoom with more than a dozen people on here. Again, we have very tiny screens, so give the chair a chance to see you and recognize you. Take time for the process to work. And this is a question and answer period, so we want to move forward, but remember that we have to take time to make the process let take the time to be recognized and speak, and then make sure you mute at the end, because it does only take one open mic to mess everybody up. Staff will not give the presentation in its entirety like we have done in the past. It was in your booklet, and hopefully you went through that book. What we'll do is we'll bring up those slides for each department, and then at that time we'll ask the budget committee to give questions or statements to try and get clarity on anything that they may have with these slides or the written statements made by the department heads. Any questions that aren't related to the department, we can record those and get back to you later. And even if it is related to a department, if we don't have the answer, we'll get it later. So just make sure that you ask the question, and hopefully we can answer it tonight. And if not, we can get back to you later. So again, it's real important to raise your hand and get up in the screen and make some motion, because I'm the one that's usually looking for hands moving around. And when we've got so many people now, these tiny little screens, it's going to be hard. So make sure you get up there and wave so that we can see you. Keep yourself muted, really important. I attend a lot of meetings with about 20 to 30 people in these Zoom meetings, and there's always one that just kind of messes things up. So let's not be that one, and let's have a quiet, efficient meeting with some good information. Okay, let me get my script out here. Okay, at this time, I'm done with my presentation. Again, I want to welcome everybody and thank you for your service to the city. We've all most of us have been part of this for a long time and seen some real big changes. And I think the changes have been good over the years. Fortunately, we're in a good position after a pandemic, and I think we'll do very well this year. So at this time, we're going to have the election of the budget chair and vice chair. Oregon Revised Statutes requires that the first meeting, a presiding officer is to be elected from the members. The chair and the vice chair can be any committee member of the budget committee, governing body, or elector. So at this time, I would entertain any discussion. Does anybody have any questions or answers about the process? Questions or concerns about the process? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion for a chair. Any nominations? I see Sharon Taylor.
I nominate Linda Krieger.
And do I have a second? I see
Second.
Terry Dawson. He's right on that. Linda, do you have anything to say?
I thought maybe Sharon wanted to do it this time before she leaves.
That was a definite no with the eyes rolled up. Okay, I have a motion by Sharon Taylor, a second by Terry Dawson to elect Linda Krieger as the chair of the budget committee for the 2021 meeting. All those in favor, please hold your hand in front of the camera. Okay. Are there any opposed? And to my new crowd, I will tell you that I always ask for both votes. So there's no doubt that we got all the votes. So even though it may be unanimous, I'm going to ask for the other vote. All right. Congratulations, Chair Kroger. You have the comm.
Mayor and Chair, can I get a vice chair also elected?
She's running the meeting now.
And Linda, you're muted.
Oops. I thought I was, can you hear me now? Okay, I thought I did unmute it. I would entertain a motion for a vice chair. Yes.
I nominate John Fox.
John Fox. Okay. All right. Anybody else? Is that a motion?
It is. I move to have John Fox as the vice chair.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor, raise your hand so we can see. And all those, oh, okay. Did you get that, Sammy? All right. Anyone opposed to that, raise your hand. Great. Well, congratulations, John, you're vice chair.
Can I abstain?
Sure. Did I tell you I was going to take next week off? No, that's a joke. All right. So
Who seconded that motion, please?
thank you. So that brings us to the budget message and some of those elements, which really means essentially Ann is going to be doing most of the heavy lifting now. So Ann, if you're ready, we'll turn this over to you.
All right, thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Obviously, we're not going to do the full budget message that we usually do when it's in person. That's the reason why there are full budget messages written by each and every department in the book. And those were really well thought out by our directors. I feel they did a very good job of expressing their concerns for their departments. So tonight we're going to touch on a few things that are important elements, and just about everything that would be goals set by the council or in the staff work plan are going to be covered by one department or another. And so I don't want to duplicate things, especially the one thing that I want to avoid is the Zoom fatigue when I see people start nodding off or their eyes are rolling back in their heads or they're stepping away for long periods of time. And I see that a lot. I'm in a lot of Zoom meetings. And so we do want to avoid that tonight. So anyway, Sammy, we can start by picking up with the, and I'll just cover a few things on the slides. So I wanted to just start tonight with looking a little bit backwards before we look forward, looking backwards. And so when I provide comparisons now, I really want to do it with the audited statements. And so the 2020 statement is our last audited statement. And since we're budgeting out 5 years, this is a 5-year comparison between 15 and 2020. So you can see that the net position of the city has increased. The general fund balances increased dramatically. Cash and investments, capital assets have went down, and that's simply because in 14 and 15 early, we capitalized the sewer, and then we did a whole lot of depreciation almost immediately. So that did make a big difference. Our debt has went down significantly, and actually in 21 it went down even more as we refinanced most of the loans here at the city for a lower interest rate. Our taxes that we receive have increased. And land use development fees, that is just an odd, we have ebbs and flows there. It depends on what development's going on. We have no loans or due to other funds in 2020. And we have contingency reserves of $900,000. So obviously the city is on a good trend. 21, it is continuing that trend. We have a lot of projects going right now that are substantial projects that we've saved up for. So SDC funds being spent in the water fund in the park SDCs. And so while it may look like we're spending more, our ending fund balances are less, it's because we were carrying those SDCs until the time when they would be spent out on a project. So we can go ahead and move forward. A couple of the work plan highlights that I want to talk about are the staff capacity that meets the service demand created by the growth of the city. So we ask ourselves, and we get asked a lot of, how do you determine when a new staff member is needed? And so part of that is when our staff is running as fast as it can and we can't get the work done, then that's a good indication. But we also look at growth. And so last year we invested in a community build out scenario plan. And what the staff wants to do and what is on our goals is to take that build out. So if this community is totally built out, what does it look like? And then we need to apply each and every department to that. So if we're adding 50 new homes in the next 5 years, and I'm just throwing that number out there, what does that mean for police services? What does that mean for public works? If there's a park in the middle of those 50 homes, what does that mean for public works? How many miles of the new roads are we going to have? How many of the ditches, the drainage ditches, are we going to have? Does it change the way our court or our utility billing system? So we'll be looking at that with the growth of development of residential homes, but we're also looking at the development of the east side property that will be annexed into the city soon. And how does that create more work for the city? So while we're always looking at it, we're really this year focusing on looking forward and trying to identify how that will change the capacity of the city. And with that, it really becomes very important that we are tracking how much time we spend on some things. And so we, both in police and public works, how do we track what we're doing now, and how will we continue to track it so that we know in the future when things are changing dramatically. With the movement to the Lane County Sheriff's Association, or the Sheriff's Dispatch, tracking all of our police calls, that's made a humongous difference for us in being able to get some reporting out and track some of those the police activity. And likewise, the Public Works Department has new software just this year that is going to track all of their calls, and all of the things that they get called out to do in the community can all be reported. So we are moving towards creating really good tracking mechanisms that then we can start looking at capacity and see when growth forces that increase in staffing. Working very hard on the completion of planned capital projects. That is water, possibly streets, parks. And so we do have quite a bit going on. Improving communications with our citizens, our council committees, and with the region. Like the mayor said, we've had a lot of communications with the region over this year, important communications, and we just keep instigating them, if you will. I think sometimes they get tired of hearing from me, but advocating for the city of Coburg and in this region, and raising our hands and making sure that they're aware of what we need and what we expect from the region. But also letting our citizens know what's going on, trying to do the mini newsletters, get information out in the newsletter, the utility billing on social media. We're also looking at a new platform called Civic Ready, in which we can push information out to citizens who opt in to get just a text message. So that is another way that we're looking at getting the word out to our citizens. Addressing the transportation concerns with our regional partners, this is a really important goal. If you ask anybody or we discuss anything in Coburg about how we're going to fix something or how we're going to plan something, everything comes back to transportation. And so it is definitely on the top of our list of things to discuss with the region. And we're working very hard on that. City Hall maintenance is very important coming up this year. Excuse me. There's some maintenance that's been kind of held off. We need to do some siding work, paint, and some window replacement. Also looking at the facade. The council is working on the implementation of the transportation utility fee. Sorry about that. I got something in my throat. And so that will happen, first reading in June, second reading in July. Lots of discussion around that. The community will begin getting brochures again very soon as they come off the press. And we're just pushing out information out to the city to let them know that this discussion is continuing. The committees and commissions have done their own work plans this year. And so we're continuing to support those work plans. We basically have set our committees and commissions up to mimic how the staff sets up their work plan, so that we can include them in our goals, and so that we're all aware of what those goals are all around. So that's been a really fun process to lead the committees through a goal setting process and then put that into work plans for them. Planning for community resiliency continues to be really important to us. We need to be able to stand on our own 2 feet in the event of emergency. It's just, there's a lot of things we can do. We're working on things like solar panels for the city hall and for some of our public works buildings, emergency fuel island, fuel storage, things like that we can continue to do to just make us a little bit more resilient. Working on the updates to the development code and then align them with our transportation plan. Broadband planning, Coburg has been accepted into a grant program that's with LCOG, the City of Eugene, and the City of Florence. And there is a broadband analysis being done. And basically, in the end, what it's going to provide for us is a broadband plan that we can move forward with. So we're hoping to utilize that to get some funding in. We are working with a independent contractor or independent broadband company who has leased fiber into Coburg from the Fiber Consortium. And they are planning for how that's going to get turned on. And then we will start going through the neighborhoods and hooking them up. I can't give you a time frame when that's going to happen, and a lot of that depends on some of that federal funds that are being made available for broadband. And then economic development is very important. I can't even stress how important it is right now. We have to support our Main Street, making sure that our businesses are recovering, making sure that our festivals and our visitors are returning. So the Main Streets project is extremely important. And we will continue to put efforts towards that. So this is just a high level, not short, but high level look at what would be on our work plan goals. And so I'm happy to answer any questions about this particular slide if anybody has one. And I can't see hands, so somebody's gonna have to. Does anybody have any questions about any of the highlighted work plan goals? Okay. well,
I don't see anybody. And just for your information, Linda and Nan, I do have my screen so that I can see all of the people instead of what we're sharing.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mhm.
So we can go back to the PowerPoint. So next slide, please. So this is just a short form of the overall budget for 21-22. It's a $15,287,000 budget. It is $3.3 million more than last year. And that's directly related to our capital projects. So in water, there's $3.3 million in water alone, or $3.083 million in water projects alone. The street projects are in materials and services. So there's 1.5 million in street projects if those go forward and the TUF is implemented. Those are listed in materials and services because you can't capitalize repair of streets. That's that it's actually repairs. And so they're in a little bit different category. So expenses is $2.2 million in increase in expenses, but you have that 1.5 in materials and services in the streets that represents that. We have an increase in allocations, both in public works salaries and in allocations from the funds that utilize the majority of the administration. We have a lot more projects, public works projects going on. And so there is an increase in allocation because it's based on the work of the city. So this city is busy right now. And so that's why there's an increase in allocated funds. We have a large contingency, $1.1 million, which is about $450,000 more than last year. And an ending fund balance overall of $450,000 more. So it is a bigger budget, but it's very much reflects the capital projects that are funded in this budget year. The next slide is, the only thing I want to say about this next slide is we did make a slight budget adjustment to cover a few things just in the last council meeting. And that was mainly to cover some staffing costs and also capital projects that we thought would get done last summer before the end of the fiscal year. And they got pushed over into the new fiscal year due to COVID. Mainly, we couldn't get the contracts lined up to get the work done. And so that was what stemmed the need for a supplemental budget transfer. We didn't have to do the supplemental budget because we had contingency funds. And that was, at first, I had people saying, well, why aren't we doing supplemental budget? And it's because this is the first time we've had enough contingency funds in every fund that we didn't have to do a supplemental budget. So that was a good thing. So we can move forward with that. So I'm going to cover the administration slides and we can go ahead and move forward, Sammy. And the maintain staff capacity that matches the essential services of the city and maintain City Hall. So I've already discussed those things. If anybody has any questions, once I go through the priorities, I'm happy to answer them. So we can go to the next slide. We're really wanting to continue to build leadership. Leaders at every level is really what we want to aim for. people that are responsible, that they're thinking for themselves, that they're making decisions, competent decisions on their own, and they're encouraged to do so. Supporting our directors, making sure they have the tools they need for success, improving our communications, representing at a regional and state level, and rebranding the city. This is a discussion we've been having. There is a new logo, and you'll get to see it in the economic development slides. And the city just needs to consider whether or not we would adopt this logo or we want to go with something a little bit different. But there is discussion regarding if we would like to rebrand the city. So these are the city recorder's priorities. And ultimately it is Sammy's job to support the mayor and the city council. And she's the one that coordinates all of these meetings and makes sure that everybody has what they need. And especially the mayor, and she does a great job at that. Taking care of all of our contracts and our records. We had the largest record request, I think, in the history of the city, possibly this year. And it was literally weeks of work for Sammy, and she accomplished it. It was a lot of work, but that is what the city recorder does. And then the office administration, making sure that we're maintaining our customer service, and we can go forward with that. And then our utility billing priorities. And so I can stop and say, does anybody have any questions on the administrative priorities thus far?
I see nobody raising their hand.
Okay, well, move forward then. Okay, so we can go to, so if you could, go ahead, okay. Yeah, you went too far. So we will be, we budgeted for an administrative assistant last year. We didn't end up hiring because of COVID. It was just not a good atmosphere to bring a new employee into when we were already trying to separate everyone. There were people working from home. So that position is again in the budget for a full-time position. We are working on records retention and utility billing focus, moving to online payment options. So we can go ahead and go forward. So for emergency response, we do have a list of things that we're hoping to continue, both the FEMA training for our staff when we can get to FEMA training again, and growing the citizens response team. Again, the fuel storage is really important. Emergency drills, which we have been participating. We've been in one big emergency drill for a year, so but we need to drill on other things besides pandemic. And then just pursuing mutual agreements with other agencies and continuing to stock our response trailer with supplies. We can go forward with that. Okay, in planning economic development, we will be, we have posted an internal position for a staff planner, which we do have a person working in the city that has a master's in planning and has been working here at the city. So we hope to move her into that staff planning position. Then we're working on updating the transportation system plan and continuing the stormwater master plan. We do have a committee working on code development, and that's ongoing right now, hoping to wrap that up this summer. And go forward. So some of the goals that were set for the Planning Commission was they really wanted to be educated more about planning in Oregon and land use. So they've already had one education opportunity provided to them. Continue to educate the community regarding land use as well. The Heritage Committee also set a goal for themselves. So they're working on goals that are a little bit different this year. They're very excited to do that. And then we are working on our planning department processes and procedures and trying to tighten those up in the next year. Go forward. So does anybody have any questions regarding planning?
I see none.
Okay, we can move to finance, and I'm going to turn it over to Tim.
Good evening, everybody. For those of you who don't know me or haven't seen me in at least a Zoom meeting, my name is Tim Gaines. I started here in July of 2020. I'm the finance director here, so I'm going to go over the finance department. So one of our goals is to get new financial software. I came from Harrisburg, which is a small city. I worked 16 years there, so I understand that we all wear a lot of hats, and so it's very important to maximize staff efficiency, and we are going to try to get software that does a better job of that. We also want to make sure we improve the accounts payable process as much as we can, make the buying process easy to use for our people that are purchasing here at the city, and make the payments in a timely manner to the vendors. We have completed a wage study for the city. We received it, I want to say, about a month ago, and we have not had a chance to analyze it a great deal yet, but we are going to do that and present it to council in the near future. Excuse me, I also have something, must be something in the air today. We want to improve the equipment and processing in our finance department. We just want to evaluate how we perform important tasks and determine if there are tools that make sense for us to purchase, or if there are some free products that will help us accomplish these goals. Employees are, in small cities, in all cities I'm sure, but especially in a small city, they're very, very valuable. So we want to do everything we can to make sure, one, that they know that, and do everything we can to retain great employees, because they're not easy to come by at times. Excuse me, sorry, I'm battling a little bit of a cold here. We have a lot of capital projects, so we want to make sure that we can track them as easily as possible and have the projects available for people to see, whether that's via electronic or however we want to do that. But we want to just make sure that we are doing a good job of tracking the capital projects, because we do have a lot of them. And we want to look at our banking. We pay a lot of money for banking, and we just want to make darn sure that we're currently getting our best bang for the buck. And so we probably will look at possibly doing an RFP for banking services and just make sure that our what we're paying out makes sense, and that we can't maybe save some money there or improve our service and save some money at the same time. I guess one thing you would notice in my recurring theme in my presentation is efficiency. Being from a small city prior to Coburg and being here, we all have a lot of work to do, and we can't just go out and hire an employee when we get too busy. We have to sometimes take on tasks that we're not maybe haven't done in the past, but we have to learn how to do it because, again, we can't just go out and hire employees. So efficiency is very important, and that's what all of the things that I'm doing as a focus in our department is about. Are there any questions at all? I went through that very quickly. I'm sorry. I probably am speaking faster.
Counselor Lehman?
Tim, you and I had a brief conversation a little while ago, and I asked you about your software and how you were enjoying working with it or needed improvements. And you kind of voiced some concerns about some software that was not working very well. Does your budget look to update that and improve that? And what's the cost and the name of the new software that you were contemplating?
Yeah, so we are planning on putting an RFP out, and we're going to not look at a specific software, but just put it out for vendors that perform that sell that kind of software. Until I get that out, and that's in the budget, it will take at least 12 months. If we picked a company today, it would take them 12 months to even get us implemented and ready to go. So we don't, in the next 12 months, we won't have a cost of that. Currently, what we're budgeting is the support for the current software we have, which will also pay for if we get new software. So there will be a cost. We don't know it yet until we get the RFPs back. And quite honestly, I just haven't had time to put the RFP together, but I'm really close. So, but
Okay,
part
thank you.
12 months before we'll know anything.
Thank you.
You bet.
Other questions? Well, thank you, Tim.
You bet. Thanks, everybody.
So Larry, are you there?
I am. Is it me?
You're up, Chief.
All right. As you can see from our slide, we've had quite a few challenges this last year. We've had a lot of successes. We've overcame every one of the challenges. We moved to a new dispatch center, which is a bigger project than you would really think. It's been a great decision, and the sheriff's department's worked out fantastic. National sentiment against police officers has been a challenge. As the mayor said earlier, we've had to adjust some policies to meet some of those challenges. For the big needs for the police department in the upcoming year would be a patrol vehicle. We're trying to update our fleet continuously. I think last year we had talked about a patrol vehicle, but we've put that off till this year, hopefully. With the new dispatch center, the old iPads we used to have is not compatible. So we're looking at buying some Surface Pros. Yeah, Surface Pros to actually be able to run the dispatch computer system in the cars. And really, that's about all we have. I'm asking to update a little bit of the training budget because ammo costs have gone up, and then training classes for law enforcement is probably about $350 every time I send somebody to some training. As you guys know from previous talks, is that the DPSST requires us every 3 years to have 84 hours of training, plus my role of leadership. And then if anybody has any questions.
Counselor Fox.
Couple questions on the challenges, and it's not to really be answered. The first two are not to be answered now, but it'd be helpful to either get a bullet update on that. And it says the legislative reforms related to law enforcement. It'd be helpful to have a couple of sub bullets. And the same thing with policies. Is that national, state, county, or our own policies? And then the questions, not being able to connect with the community. Wasn't Coffee with the Cop another thing that you guys used to do? I think it's frozen.
Yeah. So
I'm gonna move
Chief,
Larry into my office. Give me just 1 minute, please.
Okay.
thank you, Sammy.
Copy of the clock. Just say, we can select them.
All right, sorry, John, can you repeat your question?
Did you hear anything that I said?
Nope, I did not.
Okay. So I said, my first two observations were on the legislative and policy one. It would be great to have, you don't have to answer it tonight, but sub bullets to what legislative reforms and city, state, or national policies were a challenge.
I can do that right now. It'd be the use of force regarding chokeholds. We had to redo the use of force policy, bias-based policing, de-escalation training, and I think they added some more ethics requirements.
Okay, thank you. And then I said, you said not being able to connect with the community. I said, wasn't coffee with the cop one of the things you guys used to do?
It was something we used to do, and I'd love to do that again.
Okay. And the other challenge that I think I remember from February when we're going over the planning session was staffing the Harrisburg with the reserve officers. Wasn't that a challenge?
That was, and we have probably 80% reserves covering that at this time.
Excellent. Okay. Those were my questions in that area.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other questions from members? Counselor Lehman.
So Chief, I hope that you're proposing a new vehicle for the department this year.
Yeah, that's what we would like to do. We tried to do this a couple of years ago. I think 2017, we bought a new Dodge Charger after we had a $22,000 donation. So I would like to get to where every couple of years we're buying a new vehicle so we have an updated fleet.
And would that be in the range of $45,000 to $55,000?
Chad, when he bought his Tahoe, to have it completely outfitted with lights, it's the same thing, just minus a cage, was $55,000 complete.
Okay. And then maybe Ann could answer this question. Looking at the spreadsheet on the proposed budget 2021, 2022, under the police capital outlay, can you just describe the negative $61,000 there, just to give us how this is penciled out, what that would mean?
Counselor Lehman, can you give us a page number so the rest of the members can look?
There's not a page number on it.
Oh.
It is under budget summary. It's this proposed budget 2021-22. It's by fund, general fund, going down to where it says capital outlay, police. And it shows last couple of years and then the summary of the fiscal year 2022 budget. Just wondering how to read this where it shows a minus $61,000.
You're on mute, Ann.
Sorry. Yes, that is the capital outlay for their card and then for his service pros.
Okay, so it's just listed as a negative figure because it's an expense?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Fox, did you have another question?
Yeah, it was a follow-up to Council Lehman's. Larry, you said, Chief Larson, you said that you bought the cars, most of the cars used from Lane County Sheriff's Office. I was wondering how many miles do you, are they already have on them when you buy them used?
It varies. Sometimes, I mean, most of them are always over 100.
Oh my God, what do you consider excessive mileage?
Well, that's all we can afford. And when we update it a little bit, we'll take it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Other questions from any members? Anything else from you, Chief?
Nope, I think I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Sam.
Mandy, you're up.
She will be right with us.
Okay.
Okay. Hey, Sam, you shut that door. Thank you. So, just kind of going over some of the goals and priorities. Our biggest thing is try to continue with the court operations as much as possible with the COVID restrictions. I know those kind of are winding down, but we still have some things we have to follow. And it's getting easier and easier each time. Increase in workload now that we have 4 full-time officers out there. We haven't really seen it during the COVID time because there are some things that the officers are not citing for due to the governor's orders on and some of those things through the DMV. Plus, we've tried to continue some court dates. So we've been seeing bigger court dates, but not necessarily more citations just because of those dates being continued. We are, and we should by now be out of those. So we should be seeing day forward cases now in each of our court dates. So that'll be interesting to see what those numbers come out as. Some of the court dates today we had court. It wasn't a very large court date, but it went almost until 4 o'clock. So you can't really guesstimate number of sites versus long court dates. So in the future that may increase where we have to do another arraignment date session or something in the future, not quite yet, but that will increase some of the court's budget for staff time and some of the resources we would need if we get to that point. Again, one of my biggest concerns is keeping the court in compliance with legislature rulings, state destruction and purging requirements. We haven't been able to scan. We were not able to scan during a lot of the COVID because I was working from home, don't have a scanner there. Now that I'm back, of course, our system was updated and so it went down because the update didn't get done and had to call out Tyler to get it corrected. So we're back on track with that now. So hopefully I can get scanning here. That just happened last week. Purge and destroy cases. We have someone in the office that's helping us right now get some of those as administrative assistant as a temp that's helping get some of those old cases marked off on our list and hopefully get them purged, which I haven't touched in a few years. So that'll be a good feeling. Whoops, oh, see, I'm doing my own screens. Education, obviously we haven't been able to do a whole lot through the courts with everything going on. Our OACA is hoping that October we'll be able to do our in-session conference back in Newport. So hoping to do that. We have been able to do some online Zoom networking and going over some of the new legislative updates, which is really crucial for our courts, knowing what the new laws are, what everybody's doing, kind of go along with the same terms. So we were able to do that in the last couple of months. I've been doing some online training classes through some other agencies. Let's see. Continuing to do your basic SOPs, getting all the operations, trying to get those written down. Again, I'm hoping, and I think this was John Fox's question last time around, I'm hoping still to look at by the end of fiscal year 2022 to be done scanning day forward. So we'll see if we're all caught up. We did secure a additional amended, I shouldn't say we secured it. We have presented a extended 1-year contract to Jesse London and his firm to carry us through his prosecutorial services through June 30th, 2021. So that will keep him on board for at least another year to where maybe COVID restrictions and some other things will go back out for more additional bids to see if we can get something different. Jesse's been doing a great job. It's been a learning curve, but it's been good. And so we extended that the other year and that will come to council in June. Again, if we get to the point where we need an additional staff member in the future because of the increased load, or maybe even just getting someone in here for scanning, We did put on the budget for this next fiscal year, $2,500 in not personnel services, professional services. Maybe possibly bringing in a temp, kind of like we did the last time when we went from our old system to our new system, bringing in a temp again to maybe help me with the scanning project so that we can get that taken care of. And then just monitoring the court budget. Other than that, I don't think there was anything additional on the court budget that was a large increase. So that's not my slide. So anyway, so if you have any questions, I'll take them, but that was kind of the end of my spiel.
Any questions for Mandy? I see Counselor Lehman.
Mandy, can you talk a little bit about the new office improvements and how that's improved your efficiency and effectiveness? And then secondly, if you do have additional permanent staff time requests in the future, how many hours per week are you looking for?
A permanent staff member, I haven't even honestly looked that far ahead because I don't know how much the fourth officer is really going to impact us at this point. That's just something to put in your guys' ears. So 5 years down the road, or 3 years, or within the next 5 years, if that comes up. Again, I haven't even put those numbers together as for where we would put that person, let alone how much we would need that person. With COVID, it really put a damper on even seeing month to month where we're at. So until I can see that, I won't be taking care of that. So, and bringing that up to, and I would let you know plenty in advance. So the other question was the new office. The new office is great. In fact, I look at that little closet and think, how in the heck was I even in there? It has, for one, it's been able to give me room to I can actually organize. In my new office now, I pretty much have all of my cases, past and present. Whereas before I had them, some in the supply closet, some at Iron Mountain, and new only in my office. So it's nice to have all court operations literally in the court office. You know, I have an actual decent window for the front office, and I can actually see the front door, whereas before I could not even see who came in the office, which that helps a lot with Aaron and Sammy. So if they had to go to lunch or a meeting, at least I can see the front to see if anybody's coming in or if they need to be helped. So that helps in that instance as well, not just for court operations.
Thank you.
I want to add that it makes me feel better to see you in that office versus that closet, because that was a very unsafe place as far as I'm concerned for our employees. So I'm really glad we were able to get that office set up for you. Any other questions from members? Okay, next. Parks. There he is. Hey, Brian.
Sorry about that. I was muted. Good evening, everybody. One of the things that you're going to see throughout the 4 departments is the reoccurring new shop. So I'm not even going to go down that road and talk about that. But what I will tell you is, you know, the training of the crews, the younger crew members over the last year, even through COVID, I think all of them have turned a page. I really feel comfortable and in a good spot with the crew that we have right now, and their learning curves, not just in the Parks Department, but all 4 of the departments. COVID kind of did throw us a curveball. we do a lot more cleaning than we have in the past, especially in the public buildings. Mandy, can you go to the next one? Yeah, so one of the things that you're probably seeing is the roof at the Pavilion Park and the kiosk. We're getting that roof updated. And the wood repair, we're going to be doing that later this fall. So we've budgeted a little bit of capital for that. And we're always really trying to foster the working relationship with the Parks and Trees Committee. They're a very dynamic group, very well-educated people on that committee. And they do a lot of hard work. They have work parties every month. So a little plug there. If you're interested in a work party, there's one coming up in June, if you're interested. You know, they've actually done like a tree subcommittee, and you know, in years past we've talked about setting aside funds to do an analysis on the trees. We actually have on that committee now an arborist who's a retired City of Salem Parks Department employee. So Tom is very, very knowledgeable about trees, and he's been tasked by the Parks and Trees Committee to kind of help with that project. So next slide. Yeah, so one of the other things you're going to see is we've taken a couple capital lines and separated them out. One would be for equipment and any upgrades that Public Works deems necessary. And the other line would be for the Parks and Trees Committee to kind of put forward to a project that they come up with. So obviously we're going to have a new subdivision. There'll be a park in that. We have no idea what that park looks like. Parks and Trees really hasn't even been able to sink their teeth into that yet. And then the Morneau Heritage Park, that is going to be something that we work on throughout the 5-year budget. Yeah, so you can, hopefully most of you have been by Johnny Diamond Park and seen the upgrades there. All of the wooden structures except for the shelter were built in Public Works. So even the swing that you see there, that was handmade in Public Works. Does anybody have any questions on the Parks Department? I'm going to try and run through these real fast so I'm not taking up too much of your time tonight.
I don't see anybody questions. Go ahead, Brian.
Okay. So, yeah, like I said before, the training of the crew is going well. We set time aside, even though our workload is above and beyond. I feel like it's very important to set time aside to sit all of the crew down. We normally do it once a month when we do our safety meeting. We'll take an hour or two and just take one topic and focus in on that. So we'll spend an afternoon doing safety meeting and training on different various things in Public Works. The tank replacement at Premier RV, we're preparing for that. It won't be this fiscal year, it'll be the next fiscal year that we do that, but we're getting all the engineering done because that is going to be a very large expense. One of the reasons why we're bringing somebody on in July is due to the fact that workloads have just, they've been through the roof. and our inspections and our tank maintenance, I wouldn't say we're failing at that. We just, we're not getting as many done as we would like. Next slide. So this is one of the things that we were talking about, was anticipating staffing capacity. You know, a large industrial area coming online, that will take quite a bit of time. So we're looking at how we can change things in Public Works to where we have more time to do wastewater related activities. You know, every time a city grows, the staff has to grow with it, and Public Works is one of those things. You know, we started off with just a couple guys, and now we're working our way up to full capacity. So I really feel good about where we're going, and I'm very, very excited about this next fiscal year. I think we're gonna be able to show folks what Public Works can really do. There's just one of the things, like I was just talking about, the training. So we've built this panel for training purposes, and this is just one of those things that we do. Does anybody have any questions on the sewer department?
I have a question, Brian.
Okay.
We know the tanks at Premier are going to be expensive, and I was wondering how that was going to be paid. But first of all, do you have any idea? Is it going to be replaced with 2 tanks again, or does it have to be, or is it a single tank?
There'll be 3 smaller tanks than what are out there.
Okay. And how about the budgeting and how are we going to pay for that? Is that an SDC item?
Well, that's a good question. I think Ann and I have talked about that a couple different times, and it's possible some of it can be paid through SDCs, but we do have capital money that I think we were going to set aside for that too. But I think it was mainly SDCs.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I see Councilor Fox.
I'm just curious about the step system, the pumps within the septic tanks. Is there a life expectancy and a budget for the replacement of those? Well, they're obviously.
So, yeah, so those are 15-year pumps, and with the preventative maintenance that we should be doing, I think that they're probably going to be a little bit shorter than that 15 years, but yes. So, you know, we're halfway there now. So here in the next couple of years, you're going to start seeing us ramp up that tank maintenance line. We've done it this year a little bit, not anticipating equipment failure, but anticipating tank pumping.
Councilor Lehman.
I would just like to put another plug in for scheduling a visit for the council members to tour the Public Works building, the septic plant, and then the new acreage that we purchased with the 3rd well going in, and maybe at that time discussing your vision for the Public Works building. So sometime in the next few months, as COVID restrictions allow, maybe we can schedule that.
Yep, I'm just waiting for the green light from higher ups to allow people to tour the facilities.
Aren't we all waiting for the green light from higher up? Any other questions for Public Works, any of the departments from any of the members? And I certainly do recommend that we do those tours. It was good for me, and I think all of our decision makers should see what our facilities are and I don't know if Brian had pictures before he came on, but I gotta say, Brian, from what I saw before and then after Brian came on, our stuff is well taken care of. Even if it's old, he takes care of it. It's a huge difference. So kudos to Brian and his crews, because I know they work hard to keep them clean and organized and working as efficiently as possible. Okay. Anything else for you, Brian?
There's two more departments.
Streets, okay.
Like I said, I'm going to try and keep it really short. So, Ann, if you want to step in at any time in the street departments, feel free. This first slide is just talking about the operations building, and I don't think we need to beat that drum anymore. I think I've done all I could do, and now we're just waiting for some financing to come along. This has been kind of a big topic, the traffic and safety plan, getting some crosswalks crossed Willamette Street and Pearl Street. The Collector Street improvements, we're working on that. A lot of things right now stem around the TUF. And so I don't really want to go into too much detail about the street department because I'm really hoping that I can hang my hat on that TUF, and then we can really start talking about projects and getting things done. So there's again the TUF purchasing equipment. One of the things that we have listed in the TUF is a street sweeper. I've worked here in Coburg since 2013. I've been doing this since the late 90s, and this is the first city I've ever worked at that doesn't have its own street sweeper, and it was very foreign to me. But once we get one, things will look a whole lot different. Some of the things we do: leaf pickup, potholes, capital projects, maintenance projects. Does anybody have any questions in the streets? I know there's probably a lot of them, so I'm hoping Ann can help me. Here's a good slide for a new street compared to one that needs to be rebuilt. I will say that one of the things that we did, we took advantage of during COVID, was we went. I don't know if everybody recalls. The CAPS report that we had that we were working off of for, pavement, the CPI. We went ahead and through the software that we were getting for our work management, we did a pavement management program with that software company. And so now we're running on RSL, remaining service life. And those numbers are different. So as we move forward through the TUF, the RSL is going to replace the CPI. And it's going to be much easier for us to manage projects and what needs to be done as far as preventative maintenance. It's helped out with the budget process with the TUF and getting back to the TUF, that conversation. But the other thing that it did, it allowed us to do some GISing. So now we can go right into, on our mapping software, we can go right into the street, and we can actually look at assets that not just street related, but we can go to an address and look at the picture, and we can say, okay, there's a fire hydrant here, there's a water valve here, the sewer box is here, and we tried to capture connection boxes for wastewater, septic tanks, and control panels for every house. Most of you probably saw Ty Wilson come around with a crew, and they had their GPSs, and we got a lot of phone calls about that. But that's one of the things that we did in our pavement management program. Yeah, so here's just some potholes that alligator cracking, where the subgrade has failed there. Does anybody have any questions in the streets?
Brian, I'd like to add a little bit about the TUF.
Go for it.
So the budget does reflect both TUF revenues and TUF expenses or street repair expenses. Although that hasn't been approved by the council yet, we needed to anticipate it, so it's very projected. The cost of the streets repairs initially was about 2.5 million. As we started looking at Roberts Road and some of the other streets in the area, that cost went up. But the good news is the city's received some funding. So we do have $750,000 to help with the collector streets repairs, and that we need to be spending that in about 2023, I believe. And we are seeking other funding. We are also seeking funding for Mackenzie Street between Pearl and the Park, or between Willamette and the Park. So that grant we'll be submitting. So we're continuing to look for money so that it can offset the costs. The council will be looking at the TUF as a first reading on June 8th, and then a second reading in July of the ordinance. At that time, they will be setting the price per residential unit and also for businesses, local businesses. And really, I think it's the council's intention to set it at the lowest rate they can, while also considering the funds that are going to be needed for the TUF. If we can get the revenue stream established, then we can get bonds to cover the costs of repairs up front. The sooner we get them, the less cost it's going to be to do it, because the price of capital projects is going up quickly. So we want to get them done. And we want safer streets for the residents, and that's another reason why we want to get it done. So that's a little bit about the TUF right now. I can provide more information on it. There should be a brochure coming out to the community again. We put it out once. We made a few changes. We're going to walk it around town and put it out again prior to the June 8th council meeting. We'll also have information in the newsletter coming out. Be putting it up on social media and just trying to let the community know as loud as we can that the council is revisiting this in June and July. Councilor Lehman?
Just a process question. If the TUF is passed and we start planning a priority schedule of projects, is that decision going to be staff decision, council decision, planning commission decision, or a recommendation, or is the committee going to be involved in that?
Yes, and yes. I think that we will all work together. There are some parts of the projects that have timelines on them, especially funded projects. Regional funding has timelines on it always. So those will depend. I believe we are anticipating that we'll write a regional grant for Roberts Road. So that would push that project out to 24, I believe. So it depends on how the funding falls, because we do have to, but other projects, I think that, of course, the engineer and Brian have to prioritize them. And I think Brian will have a lot to say about preventative maintenance, because while we need to fix the roads that are broken, we also need to take care of the roads that are in good shape. And that almost becomes more important. So we're not rebuilding again. So I would say that there will be some priority setting for the council to consider. And if there is a committee established to oversee the TUF, then that of course would be part of their work.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions about the street department? Yes, sir.
Hi, Brian. So my question's for you, but it certainly extends to all the department directors. It's around employee retention. I've seen that in the book multiple times, and I've heard it a couple times throughout the call today. And my question probably has a number of parts, but I'll start with the first, which is how high of a priority is employee retention for you inside of Public Works? But, you know, for the rest of the department directors, how high is that priority for you in the list of all the other projects and things going on?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because that's probably my favorite question I've got over the last couple of years. It's the highest priority. We deal with, you know, a very technical wastewater system, and it takes a lot of time to train someone on that. So if we lose somebody, we're going to spend 6 to 8 months really getting them up to speed on the wastewater. Not only that, but Public Works in general is an industry, not just locally, statewide. It's a national problem. There's a big retirement age. It's a great business to get into, but a lot of people filled those positions, you know, 30, 40 years ago. So we're not seeing a younger, and I know we're probably not supposed to talk about age classes, but we're not seeing that younger generation want to get into this trade. So anytime that we can hire anybody of any age that wants to be in this business, it's my job to make sure that the training is there, that they enjoy the atmosphere that they're working in. And I got to tell you, I've talked to a lot of friends throughout the state of Oregon just recently, and the morale at the city of Coburg Public Works Department is probably the highest I've ever seen. And I've worked with a lot of different crew members throughout the years. And right now, it is the highest morale that I've ever seen. The crew enjoys coming to work. Sometimes it takes, I was telling Ann and the mayor this, it takes me shooing them out of the shop to get them to leave, because they just don't want to be away from work. And that's a great thing. So it's important to me to keep those type of employees in our Public Works Department. So it's absolutely the very top of my list.
Okay, so follow-up question to that. From a budget perspective, do you feel, and again, this extends to other department directors as well, but do you feel like the budget as proposed right now is giving you guys the resource, not only through dollars, but also like the operation building, in order to set Coburg up to be able to not only attract talent, but also retain the folks that we have?
That's another great question. So, you know, I'm very open with the crew members. We talk, we're probably going to talk at length in the morning about conversations that we've had tonight, but we talk at great length about needs and wants. And one of the things that we've all decided is we need a shop, and we understand that. But the one thing that they really understand is it's not going to happen right away. So that's the caliber of employees that we have. They know that it's coming. It's just a matter of when it happens. As far as compensation, I think we compensate crew members fairly well. They're well taken care of in Public Works. They have uniforms and boots and rain gear. Just everything is top of the line. So, and I feel like spending that extra money on crew members is important, because it does keep them. And I think that if we treat them like they're a superstar, then they'll stick around for a while. That's how I feel about it.
I'd like to add a little bit, if you don't mind, on that.
Please.
We're in the middle. Our salary survey isn't complete because there was a couple cities that didn't respond to it. And so I've asked them to go find a couple more cities for comparative. And so we're still waiting on that. But in the meantime, we've done a survey of our employees, which we will be sharing with the council, asking some question on what's important to them and what do you want to retire here? And, is it compensation? Is it time off? Is it your benefits? What is important to you? But what I do see, just initial looking at that survey, is working for Coburg in particular is important to them. Time off is important to them. Their benefits are important to them. And also quality of work and being part of a team where quality of work is happening is important to them. The city will be undertaking a overall view of all the benefits and the salaries once we get the salary package or the salary survey back. And that will be part of a council work session, I'm sure. But what we know is important to our staff is the ability to be flexible. We can offer that as a small city, that they are compensated as fairly as we can compensate them. And we are looking at that. We obviously can't compete with some of the bigger cities, and that's always a concern that we have, but we're doing our very best. And I saw that Mayor's hand is up.
Thank you, Ann. This has been an issue that Ann and I have discussed a lot, and we've been through salary surveys before. And as we all know, Coburg is a very unique community. We're one of the smallest cities in Oregon that has a police force. And so finding a comparison is really hard to do. And also, Coburg is right next to a big metropolitan area that has lots of jobs that all these skilled people can go to that have more money. And so we've got to pay attention to that. And when we talk to these consultants and ask them to use the metropolitan area, Eugene, Springfield, Lane County, as a comparator, they're just adamant that that's not a comparator. Well, I'm sorry, but any one of our employees can, with a 5-minute drive, move over and take one of those jobs with those other agencies. And I think the thing that Brian relates to, I would like to ask Chief Larson to put in also on his employees, because we put this training and experience into these people and spend lots of money. And if they start leaving, it's huge. It takes months, if not years, to get these people trained again. So, Chief, do you have something to add to that?
I do. So it's a real high priority to keep the police officers. I mean, Eugene Police Department is offering probably an $8,500 signing bonus just to go over. And they're hiring like 50 people. And then you have a lot of retirements and a lot of people leaving for the bigger agencies. So there's a tremendous demand for police officers. One of my reserves got hired with Oregon State Police here a couple months ago. I have several of the reserves testing at Springfield, Eugene, and it's just a matter of time before they get picked up. So for a police officer, the cost actually from stats is about $100,000 to replace a police officer. If it's an uncertified police officer, they have an 18-week academy. And then during that time, you also have to cover their shifts while they're gone to the police academy. And then there's an 18-month probation for them to complete a training process. So it's super expensive if we lose an employee. So we work really hard and they love working for the city, and they just have a good work environment here at Coburg.
Thank you, Chief. And I'd like to add more. Remember, we have a sewer system that is very, very unique. And Brian has to train all of his employees to this very unique system. So if we lose one, it's pretty hard to get somebody that has experience in the step system that we have. We have to train them. And so these are elements that the retention has always been at the top of the line for me, top of the list for me. And I'm glad that the council and the budget committee, I know you all voice and show that support for keeping these employees, because they are so important to what we do here. So I just say keep up the good work, and the policymakers, decision makers, and budget makers, we got to do what we can to support them. Brian, I'll give it back to you if anybody else has any statements.
No, we'll move on to the water department. And then I'll be done with you. You guys don't have to listen to me ramble anymore. So I don't think we need to really visit this one. You guys know what we need. The water projects are moving forward. The second one down from production well, the new SCADA system, we've been talking about this at length, especially over the last week because of the two main breaks that we had. The SCADA system that we have is operational, but we have no way, if something happens, if we go into, say, a fire flow situation, we have no way of knowing that because the auto dialer is no longer working. So our auto dialer right now is you folks, everybody that lives in the city of Coburg that calls the emergency pager, which it works well, and lets us know when there's water running down the street. Rehabbing the well buildings is important. The crews do a really good job of doing housekeeping and maintenance at those well sites. The mayor brought up a situation that we had a couple months ago where we think a mouse had gotten into one of the electrical cabinets and burned up a transducer, and basically took out the whole drive of well 2 and the main breaker of the main well building. So we were running off of the backup generator for over 24 hours. And that's the lifeline of the city. So we were able to scramble. That happened on a Saturday afternoon or Sunday morning. And we were able to get the system back off of backup generator by Tuesday morning, I believe. So everything kind of happened really fast and back up and running. But having that third well is going to be important for redundancy because basically the two wells are really in one building. The power is. So if that one building goes down, so do both the wells. So it's really important for that third production well. The very bottom bullet point, and I'll hit on this briefly, is replacement of the old AC water lines. Most of you probably saw the two water main breaks that we had, one Friday morning, and then we had another one Saturday morning. And those were on North Coleman, and the AC pipe just, it blew apart. Didn't have anything to do with pressure spikes because we were able to check that on SCADA. Pressure was absolutely normal. Not sure why it happened. It's just old AC pipes. Just continue the training of the current and future crew members. Like I said, we do a lot of training, not as much as a fire department, but we kind of model the public works department after a fire department where they're always training and always drilling and always trying to keep things clean because we believe that a clean house lasts longer. That's what we say in public works. The master plan projects, we're really hoping that a lot of these projects get done soon, in the next couple fiscal years. Right now, pipe, C900 pipe is fairly scarce, but I think that's starting to fade away. We're actually seeing trucks going up and down the freeway with C900 pipe, which is good because that means that people are actually making it again. So, does anybody have any questions in the water department?
Don't see any, Brian.
That's good, I guess. Well, thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it. You let me take your time. Hopefully I didn't take up too much of it.
I think we did good this year. Brian usually gets about 2 hours. Linda.
Can you hear me now? Great. So Ann, I think we want to come back to you to close this up as far as what's in the budget. I didn't notice that you had a section about possibly going through the binder, so I don't know if there was something in particular you wanted to point out to us so that we can kind of do that part and then come back to see if we have any more general questions prior to next week.
Yeah, the binder is pretty much set up just as this presentation went tonight. It has the overall budget message in the front, and then each department has a budget message in the same slides you saw tonight. There's a lot of information about the Oregon state rules about budgeting, and then it has some extra project information in the very back, supplemental information, and that is the salary scale that we use to create this budget. So these are the positions. While they all may not be filled, they could be filled at the city. So that would be the salary scale that would take us into 22. You also have the debt that is the debt schedule for the city. And if you notice that between 20 and the debt schedule now, I mean, we've dropped almost $2 million off the debt schedule. And those refinance many of the debts, as I said before. There's also a sheet on how we figure out what the allocations are for each of the departments, the pay allocations to the general fund, and a capital project list. So those are in the very back of the book. The budget summaries, we've provided you two different kinds of budget summaries. One is the spreadsheet that I showed tonight that just is an overall look at the budget as a whole. And then there is another summary that breaks it down a little bit more for each department in each fund. And then the overall budget detail sheets. So we've tried to give it to you in many forms. And I think that I mean, you guys are old hats at this, and we haven't changed the format of the book. So it should follow exactly what you're used to. As far as closing out the budget presentation, we always end with a slide, and last year's ours was stay the course.
And
yes.
I see Councillor Lehman raising his hand. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Councillor Lehman?
So I see the salary schedule. I was just wondering how much overtime our staff does in a year. And when we look at new positions, I would assume that would lower the cost of overtime. But I'm also wondering, do we avoid overtime by doing flex time and trading time when somebody does have to work overtime?
So I'll answer. So for overtime, how we budget for overtime is we go back and we have a payroll system that tracks all employee hours. So we go back and we look at the police department. We'll take all the police officers, we'll add up all of their overtime that they've worked, and then we divide it by the amount of pay periods for the year. And overall, both the Public Works and the Police Department came out at 2.5 hours per pay period per employee in those departments. So that's what we budget for. They also have Public Works and Police also have certificate pay, which is percentages on top of their salaries. And so we also budget for those. So we have to contemplate which employees are going to earn certificates this year, so that we can budget for that. As far as flex time, within a week, a 40-hour week, we can allow all employees flex time. And we also work with the employees. We have employees working different schedules. I know that our police are working 410s. Our Public Works are moving to 410s. They're trying it out. We also have other employees that are working just different schedules. And that's one of the things we can allow as a small city, is we're trying to work that in, but also, so yeah, we budget for all of those things as we're looking at the whole overall budget. Yes, sir.
So we have a minimal amount of overtime, it sounds like.
We do have a minimal, and we do try to avoid it. It's not always avoidable. And so we do budget for it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any questions further of Ann? Oh, you wanted to finish with this slide though, didn't you?
Oh, I just said that we're staying with the same side. We're staying the course. We're in a 5-year budget cycle that is full of capital projects. It requires very close attention to the budget, a lot of projections, a lot of paying attention to growth and how that's going to affect us. And we just have to stay on this course and keep doing what we're doing, because it's working, and it takes a lot of attention. And so anyway, that's what we will go with again this year.
Thank you. I guess at this point, I would ask if there are other questions regarding the budget, because next week is when we need to have all our answers, because we will then be voting to make a recommendation to the city council. So tonight's important to ask those. And I will say, once in a while, we think of something after the meeting, of course. And I'm assuming, Ann, that you would want people to send a question to you, and then you can decide about how you will let everyone know the answer, whether it's next week or something in between. Is that accurate to say?
Yeah, that's fine. I think last year, what I tried to do is, if I received questions, then we answered them, but we sent them out to everybody. So everybody got the question and the answer before. So yes.
Okay, thank you. And I will ask this one question while you guys are thinking. So the budget spreadsheets that we have in this binder, they are final for next week. As far as we know, there isn't something that needs to be adjusted or will change before that we need to be aware of. Is that accurate?
We are aware of 2 changes that need to take place. In capital outlay in parks, there's a $10,000 budget for equipment. We've now got that was for a mower, and we now have the quote for that, and it's actually going to need to be $15,000. So we would next week show a change. We would bring that back. The other one that is a very small change, but we'll go ahead and add it in, is we just got the quote for the Lane County Dispatch, and it does have a 3% growth on it. So we need to just check that. We just got that. So other than those 2 things, I'm not aware of any other changes right now to the budget.
Okay, thank you. And so are there other questions that folks want to ask tonight? Yes, Counselor Fox.
So on the proposed budget, under the budget detail, it says sum of fiscal year 2021 final. Is that projected through the end of June, or is that up to now?
That's projected to the end of June.
Okay. And so my other question is, it's helpful for me sometimes, because these are all actuals and a budget, is to see the percent, what we budgeted last year and where we are comparable. Are we over budget, under budget? And if that's in there, just point me to where that is so I can know where to see where we're over and under budget.
For this year?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can definitely bring that back next week for you and show you some graphs of where we are.
Yeah, that'll be very helpful. And my one question is, in the police department, if we're using 80% reserve police officers to do the Harrisburg contract, why do we only have $1,500 budgeted for reserve officers? Or I'm not understanding something.
That is for projects where we've had a couple times in the history where there were special projects that we were able to use a reserve officer to do. One that I can think of is we needed help in the evidence room, and not everybody can be in the evidence room. So we did hire an officer as a temporary person to help with the evidence room. So we budget a little bit of money every year, just in the event that chief needs some reserve time that actually will be paid time.
Oh, so the reserve officer funding is somewhere else within this budget?
Reserve officers, there's really not funding or supporting them other than their education piece, and that is in the expense line.
I meant the cost of when we use them. Do we budget for using them?
They're unpaid.
They're unpaid.
Oh,
So
excellent.
when you see all of them, thank them. They volunteer.
I'm gonna.
Yes.
That answers that question. Thank you.
I just want to say that Ann and I had a meeting with the police officers last year, and they were all in uniform in the city council chamber. And when you see 18 officers fully dressed and ready to go, that all wear Coburg police uniforms, is pretty impressive. And again, that just goes to speak to the department and the chief's leadership. He's got some great reserves, and it's a huge benefit to this city that these people volunteer to do that for our city. So once again, it's kudos to the police, the reserves, and the chief.
Yes, definitely. Awesome. Other questions on the budget tonight? Am I missing anyone? Oh, here we go. Okay, Todd.
I have a general question for Ann. It's not budget related, so I'm hoping it's a quick answer. But you mentioned that in the economic development stuff, the logo. Is that intended to be a new city logo, similar to like what Sammy's got on her screen right now, or is that more so used for just local businesses?
So the bicycle logo that says Historic Coburg, that is a result of a branding that was conducted through the Main Streets Project. The city has discussed adapting that logo to our city logo. And there's some different ideas on both sides of that. And the council hasn't really had a chance to discuss it yet. So it could be that the city might decide to do something that incorporates that, but not exactly the same. I think there was some concerns that there would be a confusion between the city and the Main Streets program or the chamber. So some people didn't think it was a good idea. I see cities branding as a whole. So it's just one of those discussions that still needs to take place.
Okay, and is that happening specifically at the council level, or is there like a committee involved in that for, citizens to weigh in, or is that just going to be happening at your guys' level?
We haven't planned for it yet, so that's a good question. The branding piece went through the Main Streets programming. So that, I don't know if you guys noticed, it's in your books, but on the economic development slides, there's a logo there. That is the new branding logo for Coburg as it goes for our visitors, chamber, Main Streets, festivals, things like that. So the discussion as to whether the city is going to take that on as well is that has not started yet.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions tonight? Some people have been quiet. Good presentation for sure. I think we have a lot to digest. So while you're thinking, I will just go back to say for next week, we'll start at 6 o'clock again, and we have the URA budget, which hopefully or usually is short. And then at 6:15, this budget committee, so that we can then come to a final working together to decide if we are ready to recommend this to city council. And it sounds like, Ann, you'll bring back some different finances for us there on the two changes, and any questions that people think of outside of here. I don't recall that we had any questions tonight that need to be brought back next week so far verbally. Am I accurate on that?
I'm not aware of any. We definitely will bring back some budget to actual figures for 2021 for finance and be ready to present those. And then we will also make you aware of any budget changes that we need to make before you finalize the budget.
All right, what other questions do we have? Ray, you can see everybody, so you have to let me know. Okay, Sharon.
For these changes and for the URA budget, how will we get those updates?
So the UR8 budget, I believe Sammy will be sending that out. You should be getting that probably maybe even tomorrow, the budget packet for URA, which is a very small packet. And then changes, I think that we can try to send them out prior to the meeting. It'll be just a couple changes. So, but we can go ahead and let you know what line items those are and what those changes will be. We will also update the overall budget summary sheet and make sure you get that as well, so you can see the accurate budget numbers for your recommendation. Councilor Lehman?
I would just like to compliment you and the staff. I thought it was a very effective and efficient presentation of all the document materials in a well-run meeting.
Thank you. We appreciate that very much. Mayor?
Linda, you're muted, so I'm going to go ahead.
Thank you. I was having a little trouble there. I got some messages, so go ahead, Ray.
Okay. I just want to say thank you to the staff for putting this together. As you can see, technological hurdles come about all the time. And the work just putting the document together, let alone getting all of us on this meeting and being able to communicate, is a real production. And I hope, Linda, I hope everybody, it worked okay for me to call people, because I know this stuff pretty well. So I was able to bring the big screen up and let you guys watch the screen. So if we need to do that again, I'm more than willing to do that. Otherwise, I think it was just a great production for the work that we did. And Sammy, once again shows that we're getting through all these little stumbles, trying to get all of us together, and each of us has our own technical difficulties, let alone being human. And we get through it. So thank you again to the staff, and great job. And I'm glad to see Linda back in the chair.
Well, that was well said. I couldn't have said it better myself, Ray. And it worked pretty well for me too, since you could see the folks that we can't see their faces. And I see Sammy's face again, which is good instead of the logo. All right. So you had a couple minutes to think if there's any other questions, because I'm close to calling for adjournment. So anybody's hand up before that? All right, I adjourn this meeting at 8:11 p.m. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.